Thank you very much. Ms. Wild, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Chairwoman, I am not sure I'm going to get a gold star here, but I'm going to try. I was encouraged when I read the testimonies of the witnesses getting ready for this hearing because I found a number of points of agreement with each of you. And in fact, much of this hearing has addressed points of agreement. But there are a few areas that I really need to hone in on. I do want to say, I want to make a couple of observations at the outset. Here I am as almost the last witness, or the last person to question, so I've heard a lot in the course of this hearing. And my observations, first of all, to my colleague and to anybody who believes otherwise, CRT, otherwise known as critical race theory, is not taught in the K-12 schools, ever. This is a talking point that has been used by the opposition party to try to inflame parents and people, and it is simply not done. We need to stop talking about it. Number two, there is a reference in at least one testimony to cruel COVID-era closures of schools. I'd like to point out that the COVID-era closures of schools started under President Trump. And I'm not suggesting that it was inappropriate, but this seems to be something that is consistently blamed on the Biden administration and Democrats, and it is very important to note that the schools were closed in roughly March of 2020 when President Trump was still president. Third, I've heard a lot of comments about teachers and teacher unions, or I've read about a lot in the testimony, almost suggesting that they are the root of all problems in our schools. You know, it seemed to me, it was refreshing when we were going through COVID and so many of these kids were learning at home online. It was so refreshing to hear parents say, now I really appreciate my kids' teachers, because they understood just what a challenge it is to teach. So those are my observations. On to the points of agreement. Dr. Sullivan, I agree with your testimony that Pell needs to be expanded to include workforce programs. Mr. Pulsifer, I agree that higher ed must meet the needs of the workforce and that higher ed must create value for the students, and higher ed must be accessible, traversable, and equitable. Just want you to know all the things I agree with you on. Mrs. Gentles, I agree with you that far too many forces within the education system insist on prioritizing the promotion of ideologies over academic instruction. I agree with you that we need oversight and accountability of emergency federal funding to schools, and I think the Biden administration is actually doing that oversight and accountability of those funds. And I agree with you that far too many classrooms are chaotic and sorely in need of programs that support mental health and discipline. We do disagree, however, on where these ideologies that you spoke of are coming from. And I want to start with talking about the effort to ban books in public school districts across our country. We've heard from PEN America that 138 school districts across 32 states banned books from the summer of 2021 to the summer of 2022. These bans affected 4 million students nationwide. 41% of the banned books over this time period featured LGBT themes or characters. 40% featured characters of color. 21% dealt with issues of race and racism. Do you believe that all of those books in those categories should be banned? That's just a yes or no question.
No, I'm not a supporter of book bans.
Okay, so good. Then you probably would agree with me then that this nationwide movement to prohibit students from reading certain books is an attempt at ideological indoctrination in our public education system, which was exactly what your testimony did not want to see?
I would want to point out that the books that are being brought up and questioned, not banned, but questioned, are generally of very sexually explicit in nature, regardless of the other themes and the focus of, or the main characters in those books. The sexually explicit nature of the books, particularly when you're talking about graphic novels that are aimed at younger, emerging readers, those are the primary concern.
So I think we could probably agree that sexually explicit material should not be given to young elementary school students. But can we agree that it's important with older students to teach the skill of critical thinking?
We absolutely agree that critical thinking is important.
Meaning the ability to look at a situation, weigh the evidence, look at the trustworthiness of a source, particularly now with rampant social media that spreads all kinds of things, and arrive at a person's own conclusions based on the evidence? You like that idea?
Absolutely.
Okay, and this is best done by exposing people, and I'm not talking about 4 and 5 years old. This is best done by exposing people to different ideas, teaching them about the sources, and letting them evaluate the evidence. True?
Yes.
Okay. So in general, would you agree? Yes. I told you I wasn't going to get a gold star. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you.